Welcome to Chronic Conversations, a discussion series within Decoded HQ where we try and understand the things that are happening within the world. Now, the goal here is not to be definitive or give a verdict. The goal here is to try and understand the systems and structures that make these events possible. Hi, I'm Jay Chronik, your host. Let's get into it. So one of the stories I really found interesting was the controversy surrounding Orani Kumalo and Action SA over the shooting of a Nigerian man. This particular story was interesting because a lot of people were making it about what's right and what's wrong, but I don't think that's the case. I think a more important conversation needs to be had about something else. But first and foremost, let's now see the media statement that Action SA drafted. I'm not going to read all of it, but if I paraphrase what they're basically saying, obviously South Africa has had a problem with the crime rate, and basically Action SA is pointing towards that, saying that yeah, instead of keeping like this is now I'm reading verbatim. Instead of keeping criminals off the streets and behind bars, they arrest those who do their work they are too corrupt to do. That is from Action SA. But here is where I mainly wanted to focus on. He said, let's look at a few facts of Korani's case, right? So, first point, Korani raided the residence of a suspected drug dealer with SAPs. Okay, fair enough, right? The police found unlicensed ammunition and arrested the suspect. Okay. The suspect was never charged and never appeared in court. Okay, fair enough. Instead, he was released from custody and his ammunition was returned. Now, already we don't know why this happened. Was it out of corruption? Was it out of the fact that he was found innocent? Who knows? But this particular point, the next point that Action SA now alludes to, is what is the most interesting part and is the grounds for what we should focus on. He then says, we now believe the suspect is allegedly involved in drug dealing, in a drug dealing racket with SAPS members. This particular point is where there's a bit of contention. Not contention, but it's interesting to know whether Action SA voters or those that want to vote for Action SA are comfortable with shoot first, ask questions later. Action SA or Korani Kumalo, they now have to prove that this man was a drug dealer because basically their belief that the suspect was involved in the drug dealing racket, they haven't really produced any evidence or any proof. And they're only, like literally, they're only going to now start producing that proof after they've already shot the person. Are people comfortable with substituting coercive force for due process? No warrants, no questions were asked of the particular the alleged drug dealer. And again, reports are saying that he could have not been a drug dealer. He could have been innocent, which which then it it breeds grounds for unstable system. There's a reason why you ask questions and you make sure that you've got the necessary evidence before you take action. It's to make sure that the system is stable. Now, what Action SA is now proposing is it's going to somewhat be a bottleneck or a ceiling for those that are somewhat on the fence on whether to vote for this party or not. Because now they need to ask themselves the question, are they comfortable with potentially giving people like Korani Kumalo more power that they can possibly use more coercive force in the future? Just imagine if he's using this amount of coercive force without him actually being within government. Imagine if you give him more power. What is the chance that the coercive force is not going to escalate? These are questions that Action SA voters and those that are looking at voting for Action SA will have to ask themselves. So the next story, we now look at Zimbabwe. We've got Zimbabwe's cabinet approves plan to extend president's term in office through constitutional amendment. This would basically extend President Emerson Mnangagwa's stay in office up until 2030. Other proposed changes in the bill presented to the cabinet on Tuesday include a provision that the president be elected by parliament rather than through direct popular vote. This will essentially mean that the president won't be elected by the people. The president would then be elected by parliament. So adopting somewhat of the same model that is in South Africa. That is in South Africa, where the president is not like people in South Africa, regular citizens do not vote for their president. Parliament is the one that has that responsibility. Um, Conversations around this have been mostly about whether this is right or wrong. I do not think that that is. I don't think that that is a conversation I like getting into, because remember, I always feel as if morality is subjective. Anyone can defend what's right or wrong, but from their own different perspective. I think I mostly focus on what the system is signaling, because the system will always prioritize stability over people's feelings and principles. So, what exactly is the system signaling? The system, from what I'm gathering, is that the system is basically saying that there's a risk of instability if elections happen frequently, right? It's not to say that elections aren't going to happen, but there's a risk that if if we have a situation where elections come too frequently, the system rearranges itself, and sometimes if the system is constantly rearranging itself, it then collapses. So extending Emerson Mnangagwa's President Emerson Mnangagwa's tenure could be the system saying that this is the best way in which stability can happen. Remember, stability. I must state this again because I don't want people to start thinking that I'm aligned with political parties and whatever. No. What I'm trying to say is that from a stability point of view, all right, it has been seen that it's that having less having less frequent elections is more stable to the system. Because what happens, not only because a lot of the times when people talk about elections in Zimbabwe, they will look at it from a point of, um, damn, if the opposition party then wins, then there's instability. Like every time there's elections, there's a threat that potentially if the opposition party wins, then everything is gonna go bad or everything is gonna become good. There's that conversation that people have. What people don't understand is that there's also another conversation within the ruling party itself. That if there are always frequent elections, there are always power reshuffles and everything gets reorganized, and it then becomes a situation where the system becomes unstable. Becomes unstable not only from the point of it being destabilized by an opposition party, but within the ruling party itself. That frequent elections destabilize it itself. That even though they can win elections, but the ruling party itself, its system then gets rearranged, which can destabilize the country. Usually, when we have a situation where tenures are being extended, it means that there could be fragmentation within the ruling party. There could be fragmentations, and hence, remember what I said. Every time there are elections, then powers. So the less elections you have, you you can reduce the risk of the system itself being destabilized. So that is the Zimbabwe situation. I hope, I really hope I didn't lose you guys in how I was explaining, or I hope I explained it as well as I can. That is the Zimbabwe story in a nutshell. We then go on to Burkina Faso because I felt like this was a good transition from Zimbabwe to Burkina Faso, because Burkina Faso's parliament approves ban on political parties. This is an article I'm reading from African News africannews.com. Okay. So Burkina Faso's transitional parliament on Monday approved a bill banning all political parties in a move observer says allows the military junta led by Captain Ibrahim Traoré to consolidate control. See, the system now is saying that there's a risk that there could be a destabilization, that there's a risk of instability if there are elections or if there are political parties. Because remember, if there's fragmentation, that means people are not unified, and if people are not unified, it's easy for um, external forces to then capitalize on that division, right? So I'm going to continue reading the article. The text, which received no opposition from lawmakers, repeals the Charter of Political Parties and the law relating to the financing of parties, electoral campaigns, and the status of the political opposition, which is interesting. I think this is mostly focusing on the fact that um, political parties, who funds them, is that you have a situation where political parties are being funded by western not western countries, but western organizations who have interests in extracting resources from Africa. So again, this move then somewhat tries to reduce that risk, that at least now you have political parties that will make sure, well, you won't have political parties, you now have only Ibrahim Traoré and his junta that will make sure that the country is in control of everything, right? The problem, which there's always disadvantages to this, is that grievances need to be expressed. When I say grievances, it's that feeling that people have towards the system. If we have a situation where we have um, a country, if we have a situation where citizens within the country have no place to express their grievance, right, how they feel about the system through elections, they're going to express it through something else. Remember, elections are the system. So if you don't express it throughout the system, then it's hard for you to monitor it. I'm going to tie it into to South Africa. A lot of people criticize political parties like Operation Dudula, March on March. That is actually good things for the system. Why? Because grievances can be expressed through that and not through things that are outside of the system. It's easy for the system to then understand, to say, okay, this is the situation. People are feeling this type of way about foreigners and feeling this type of way about the economy. They do that through political parties. Once you remove that, you cannot control where they're going to express it. And sometimes where they express it, it ends up being detrimental to the country. So, with what's currently happening in Burkina Faso, yes, you have controlled the potential risk of division through fragmentation of political parties, but you have not necessarily stopped the long-term risk of division through grievances. Because if people don't express their grievances through the electorate, they're going to find another way to express those grievances. And the question is, how is Burkina Faso going to handle that in the long term? So these are the three stories that I really found interesting in my week. Please, I really want to know your thoughts and your opinions and what you felt about what I said. Or are there other things that you want to talk about? We can talk about it here on Chronic Conversations. That's how we get down. That's how we make sure we understand what's happening. We understand the systems that are currently producing the events that we are seeing. Hope to see you guys next time on our next episode. I'm Jay Chronik. It's been a pleasure.